hello. Welcome back to another Unwatched Pile. It's so heavy, that Unwatched Pile. I don't know what to do with my hands. Andrew's not amused. It's okay.
I'm trying to figure out how does one react to said joke,
It's
and I
not a
wasn't
joke.
sure.
It's just me being like an idiot. I'm just
I
an idiot.
guess you said it, not me. So
Yeah, I
there
know.
you
Well,
go.
it's
I do.
okay.
Yeah,
We're here to talk movies. We're not here to talk
that's
about
very true.
my. Yeah.
Your
So
comedic chops.
we're here back on the Unwatched Pile, the show where we dig into the stack of movies that we have not watched yet, and we bought them, and we're like, man, I bought this. I should probably watch it now. And so we're here back to do that. We all picked a movie to watch from that Unwatched Pile, and then after that, we're like, what would pair nicely with this new movie I just watched? And then we talk about that one as well and why they match well together. And we, of course, bring along a special guest with us. But Andrew, before we introduce that guest, how are you doing?
Doing okay. Doing okay.
Dressed fancy. That's a nice little fancy shirt you're wearing.
Thank you. It is
Button-up,
flannel, I
Yeah.
guess.
Oh, I like flannel. Yeah.
I do like flannel. I've been slowly adopting the ways of the flannel as my age gets older. Every single winter, I say that I'm going to adopt the wardrobe of Rock Hudson and All That Heaven Allows. So I'm slowly
Yes.
making my way to my Rock Hudson era of wardrobes.
I'm in that stage of wardrobe where it's more like the dude.
For the Big
Where it's
Lebowski?
a lot, like just a bunch of pajama pants, sweatpants.
You're describing me to a T.
Oh,
Man, I did say that I do have to kind of gather myself when we do these live streams now. I can't show up all dude like. I mean, I guess you can, but I do like to represent the Chasing Labels brand with some, modicum of respect.
some class,
Some class.
a little bit of something.
Indeed.
Well, somebody else with some class is here today to talk with us. She has been a frequent, just watcher of our stuff, always contributing, always putting in her first time watch. Every time we do the show, she'll be the first one in the chat, throwing in all this info right at us. We usually shout her out at the beginning of this show, sometimes Chasing Labels as well. And that is Josie DeMarco. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Sorry you guys can't see my face. It's something weird with my computer's camera.
Yeah, we were going to explain that. So yes, we had, of course, we were started a couple minutes late. We were having some technical difficulties. She's got like a new computer, Josie does, and it's not cooperating camera wise. So it will be you do see Josie's face on our background here. So just see that and just picture it in motion.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Let's face it. Most people just listen to the audio anyway. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd say people, this started out as an audio thing. So, but I think, maybe next time we bring you on next time, hopefully your camera will be working next time we bring you back. So
yeah. And I'm comfortable in my pajamas.
Nice. We will just have to take your word for it. Obviously,
yeah.
As a fellow East Coast person, it is also late at night. So I feel like, since we do these live streams late at night, we do these recordings late at night, I feel like I hope our audience will excuse us for our wardrobe choices. That's the way I rationalize it.
Well, I would hope we're matching them. So, but before we get into this installment of the Unwatched Pile, so Josie, tell anybody that doesn't know anything about you, tell them a little bit about you, and then what you do. You of course also do YouTube videos as well. So please tell everybody a little bit about that.
So I work at the Glen Cove Public Library here. I live on Long Island, and so I take Able Ride there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I page at a library. I put books away, organize them, I clean. I organize the magazines, and I have a YouTube channel and a TikTok and Instagram. I do poetry. Nice. I write my own original poetry, inspirational poems inspired by self-help books. And my YouTube channel is I like to talk about a mix of old and new movies, and what I like to do each year is that when Oscars come, I like to pair Best Picture nominees with older movies, kind of like how you guys do pairings here, and how Brian Sauer and Elric Kane do when they talk about do director-centric episodes, they pair each of the films in the filmography with another movie. That's kind of like what that inspired me to do what I do with that. And I discover a lot of my first time watches through using the library system. You see, I don't actually buy a lot of Blu-rays. I rent most, like, through the library system. I request like interlibrary loans of DVDs and Blu-rays. And I just want to say libraries are essential if you want to for discovering physical media. Like, you know, for people who can't afford it all, rent from a library. And if your library doesn't have it, try to get an air loan. I can't stress this enough, how important libraries are.
We've talked about it before on here. I mean, like, obviously we you know, a lot of us you know, talk about our reminiscing of video stores, but really, I mean, the library can be today's video store if you let it.
It is.
To
It
an
really
extent,
is.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I have very fond memories going to the library as a kid in the 90s and renting VHS tapes. They had a lot of VHS tapes to rent. Of course, that was the days before DVD. And I know some libraries have very large DVD and Blu-ray available to rent. I even saw a tweet yesterday where someone said their local library was starting to get 4Ks into rent as well, of like newer films.
I've rented 4Ks before through the library system.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing if you think about it.
Yeah,
I mean,
mine here in Thomasville has a pretty decent sized Blu-ray collection, and honestly, I've given to it, so it's you know, like, it's gonna keep getting larger over the years I live
on my
here.
channel, I like to do themes. Like, I pick a theme and talk about movies related to the theme. Like, I just did romance recommendations for Valentine's Day. Last year, I did movies with nature themes in them for Earth Day. And in May, I did movies with mental health theme.
Nice. I like that. Yeah, that's something
very nice.
Something that's always fun and get your mind thinking about all different types of film. So that keeps you busy just exploring, doing things like that.
I have an educational approach to my videos. Like, I'm not trying to push an agenda or anything. My goal is I approach it like a teacher. You know, I'm in an educational field, a library.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like Andrew. Andrew becomes a teacher on here a lot of times. He likes to get on.
I don't know. I guess because I'm a lifelong academic. Like, I've always thirst for knowledge. You know what I mean? And as time has gone on, I've come to the not conclusion, but like the idea is that our knowledge is out there. We just have to go get it, especially now more than ever.
Self-taught.
Yes, I'm self-taught in a lot of things. Obviously, you know, I've had formal education. You know, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, but a lot of the stuff outside of that, especially with movies and film, I kind of just did it all myself.
Me too.
You know, just watching movies, listening to people talk about movies, listening to commentaries, listening to making of behind the scenes stuff, stories, and just listening to other film fans as well. You know, some of them are much more educated than I am, or others that I know. That's just the way it's been.
Would it be okay if we went to the picks now?
Oh, sure. We're ready to do it. Let's do it. All right. Well, with that said, Josie, please tell us your first time watch, and then we'll come back around and we'll talk about your pairing.
My first time watch is The Uninvited from 1944. This is a Criterion Blu-ray that I borrowed from my brother. So it's Lewis Allen's directorial debut, and it's based off of a novel of the same title by Dorothy McCardle, which I've read, and it's a brilliant novel, and this is such a great adaptation of it. So Rick Fitzgerald, played by Ray Milland, and Pamela Fitzgerald, played by Ruth Hussey, are brother and sister. They go vacationing in Cornwall, England, and they discover a beautiful seaside home called the Windward House. So they purchase it from the Commander Beach. They are then introduced to the commander's granddaughter, Stella Meredith, played wonderfully by Gail Russell, who lives in a close-by town, Biddlecombe. Stella is emotionally triggered by their buying of the place because it is of strong sentimental value of her. It was a place where her mother, Mary, fell to her death 17 years prior. The commander does not agree with Stella going into the house, but Stella does so anyway. And Rick and Stella fall in love, and they start realizing that the house is haunted. Like there's a ghost inside, and they believe that the ghost of Mary's around, Mary Meredith being Stella's mother, and family secrets are unveiled. The mystery's fantastic. It has a super satisfying twist, and what makes this unique as a ghost story is that it's set during the springtime and not during the fall. And there's, if you don't mind, would it be all right if I read a little bit of the essay in the Criterion booklet?
Sure.
It's striking how often the Uninvited works by going against what's expected. Oh, to credit this essay by Farron Smith Nem, Spirits by Starlight. That's in the booklet. The setting, as I said, is not stormy autumn, but warm and gentle spring. The opening, and they add humor and slightly sprightly music cues and quite a bit of sunshine. And the rooms are airy, and the huge windows overlook breathtaking ocean views. Naturally, Rick and Pamela don't yet suspect a thing, but after setup and the narration, already it's possible to wonder what sort of special gusts keep the chandeliers cobweb free, and the dog won't go up the stairs. And another interesting thing to add from this essay is Alan wanted the ghosts off screen, leaving all supernatural apparitions to the imagination. He was vetoed by Paramount, however, and spoiler alert, I mean, I won't say how, but a ghost does appear later in the movie. It's, the effects that they could do at the time were done. But like the rest of the film, this is what the author adds here. The vision produces shudders through suggestion. Like it's left to in other words, it's left to the audience's imagination, like what the ghosts looked like, except for that one scene, even though the director was like initially against that. And the performances in this film are all fantastic. And I love the Gothic cinematography and production design of the house and the seaside. Like, even though it's set during the spring, they still managed to give it a Gothic feel.
Yeah.
It's a real gem. I'm surprised. I feel like it's underrated. It's not like talked about as much as other ghost story movies. Like, this is up there with The Others and other ghost story films.
The Innocents is another good one. Yeah. Criterion put that out. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen this one yet, but Ray Milland is an actor.
Ray Milland is kind of, I don't know, there's something about his presence that's kind of funny in this. He takes it seriously, but he doesn't take it too seriously.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And I like the idea that the ghosts don't end up being on screen too much, because I mean, how you describe the situation here kind of reminds me of Spielberg and Jaws, where initially
it's funny you mentioned Spielberg, because in the essay, it is said, the essay by Farron Smith Nem, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, the effect is enough like spirits that swirl through the climax of Raiders of the Lost Ark to suggest that Steven Spielberg knows this film too.
Yeah. The only thing is we know that with Spielberg, sometimes, especially with Jaws, that was kind of an accident. You know, like the fact that the shark wasn't in the movie that much was just because they couldn't get it to work.
Yeah, they couldn't get it to work.
You know, but
I'm pretty sure Steven Spielberg has probably seen this movie just
I'm
because
sure he has.
he's kind of a super cinephile. And
Yes.
if you've ever seen his work and you ever listen to him talk, he's one of those directors who rightfully likes to come out and say, "Yes, I took this from this and put it in my movie."
Yeah.
He said that
Yes.
so many times.
Bluntly saying it.
Very much so. Doesn't really hide it. A lot of them don't. I know Scorsese doesn't hide it, and a lot of them don't.
I would have to imagine that Alejandro Amenabar, that if I'm saying his name right, the director of The Others, had seen this too.
Yeah.
I would assume so as well. And I feel like almost like Guillermo del Toro probably.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
For sure. This had to have been.
Yeah, I don't want to.
On him. And I actually have some trivia about the film from IMDb that I want to share. So bear in mind, I'm
just a couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm plagiarizing, if that's okay.
That's fine.
So trivia. Manya McGill, the mother of Angela Lansbury, has an uncredited role as the customer who enters the cigar shop while Roderick is speaking with the proprietor. Paramount added special effects to the film, having decided at the last moment to emphasize its supernatural premise. The effects were removed by censors when the film was distributed in England. In 2009, Martin Scorsese placed this film on the list of the 11 scariest horror films of all time. And Guillermo del Toro chooses this as one of his 6 favorite, quote, fright flicks. And the director, Lewis Allen, actually did a lot of theater directing before this movie.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, a lot of them directors back in that time were either coming from theater or, you know, of course, some of them start out in silent film, so that was a whole other ball game too.
And when you think of a haunted house film, you do think of it being very stagey. You know, one location, usually people talking or moving in and out through rooms in a house. You know, it's very isolating.
This is not my pairing, but a ghost movie I want to shout out that I watched recently that was fun was The Ghost of Mr. Chicken with Don Knotts.
Nice.
All right, that's a good pick. That's one I definitely want to check out. And of course, it did just get an announcement from Imprint Films for a new Blu-ray.
Yeah, it's getting on a double feature with that, and then I think Lewis Allen's film he did after that, The Unseen.
Yes.
Is getting a double feature. The Uninvited has been available on the Criterion Collection Blu-ray since 2013, so it's been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
I remember when that came out, a lot of people were buzzing about it. It's always been at every single sale I've gone to at Barnes & Noble all the time.
No one talks about it that much. Not a lot of people talk about it.
They don't, maybe because Lewis Allen's just not he's not a bigger name, I guess. I mean, Ray Milland though is kind of a relatively well known. Steven,
he's not as well known as like Humphrey Bogart,
right? I think he's mostly known.
The Lost Weekend.
The Lost Weekend. I was just mentioning. No, Steven loves that film.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But you know, unfortunately, horror films in the Criterion Collection kind of get buried. I feel like for the most part.
Yeah, that's. I guess they don't advertise them as much as their other movies.
Yeah, and like 40s horror is a lot different than modern day horror. I mean, it's a lot, like you said, they're limited by what they can do special effects wise. A lot of it's practical, which of course is charming for the time, but modern day audiences sometimes stay away from that, which is unfortunate because they're missing out. They really are.
Yeah. But before we move on to Andrew's first time watch, we got a couple. We got some people in the chat. Dan's saying a lot of stuff. He says, "You do look like a teacher tonight, Andrew."
That's cute. Tell Dan that's cute.
Thank you. I never have had the patience to become a teacher. Ironically, one of the biggest probably education or career destinations for a lot of people in my state were teachers. Yeah. Like they all went to the local colleges for teaching. So many people I went to high school with and were in school and college with were there for teaching.
There's that saying.
Josie, Dan also liked your recommendation, so he's gonna have to.
Oh, thanks, Dan. I participate. Sometimes I go into his Take 3 episodes
Yeah.
live. But to your point, Andrew, it's like that that's saying those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach gym, which
I guess that's true.
I don't agree with that. And here's because you do need I think there is a special skill that's required for teaching, and becoming a gym teacher is really hard. Like the like actual like requirements. Like I've known people who majored in phys ed, and it's like basically like pre-med.
Yeah, I've had I one friend I had in high school. I think he became a phys ed teacher nowadays. But yeah, I've always been pro education and pro helping people learn things that perhaps they don't know of. Typically, cinema. I think a lot of the reason why we kind of do a lot of this podcasting, Stephen, is to kind of inform people in general about certain things, whether it be collecting information, whether it be about movies or actors, actresses, whatever the case may be. I think knowledge is kind of fluent. It's always around us. We just got to like grab onto it.
Yeah, it is definitely. A couple more comments here. Our guy over at the Disconnected, Ryan, saying, hope you three all are doing amazing. And of course, he also said the others is a legendary pick. I think he might have confused. I hope he didn't confuse, because your pick's the Uninvited. I don't know if I think he might have confused.
Well, she mentioned the others.
Well, I know she did, but but just in case, Ryan, you're wrong. It's not that. But no, it is a good pick though. It's definitely a kind of a slept on, or more modern horror film.
And I love when they make fun of in Scary Movie 3. When Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Those movies.
Ryan says he's always wrong. No, you're not. Not just today. Just today. All the other times you're right, Ryan. All right. Well, let's move on to Andrew's pick.
Just would it be all right if I got a drink of water for a second? I'll be right back.
We can't see you. We wouldn't know.
You could be doing jumping jacks for all we know.
That's how you do whatever makes you feel good. Do it. Now, Andrew, please.
Yes.
Tell us your pick and how it was.
All right. So I picked something that's been sitting in my unwatched pile for a little while, I think. Maybe a year or two. I'm not quite sure. I actually bought this from hamiltonbook.com. I think that's how it's either Hamilton Books or Hamilton Book. Either way, look it up. Sometimes you can find some really interesting Blu-rays there for relatively cheap. Like this one here, which is Harry and Son, which is a film directed by my favorite actor of all time, and Paul Newman. And this film came out in 1984, and it's one of his, I think, 6 or 7 7 director features that he did. Most of them are available on DVD and or Blu-ray. Some are not even available on DVD at all. I have several of them in my collection, but this one happened to be put out by Olive Films in 2015. Olive Films, of course, now has kind of gone away, and their catalog licensing has been getting scooped up by a bunch of different boutique labels. I'm hoping this gets scooped up by one of them, because before I get into the film, unfortunately, this release here has absolutely nothing in the way of special features. It is literally just the movie and a scene selection function or chapter selection function. Not even a trailer was put on this. So it kind of shows you how little was put into this release. But I think it's a film that if you're a Paul Newman fan, you at least want to watch it, because it's a film that he not also directed, but that he also starred in. And as you can imagine by the title, it's a movie about predominantly about a relationship between a father and son. As you see here, you have the ever handsome Paul Newman here, and then you have the actor who played his son in Robbie Benson. Robbie Benson, who's an actor who's still active today. You probably have seen him in several things, which escape my mind right now. But they play a father and son, and they could not be two different people. So it's one of those films about a relationship between a parent and a child where they're completely different. They're from different generations, in terms of their mindsets on life, their in terms of like their goals in life are completely different. He's a blue collar construction worker, and his son like cleans cars for a living or details cars for a living, and his son can't hold a job while the father um has probably been working at the same job for decades. But unfortunately, now the father, played by Paul Newman, is getting older and he can no longer work. So he's going through a life crisis. And his son is trying to figure out his life. So he's going through a life crisis, and they butt heads. They butt heads at times in this film. So it's that classic, uh, familiar family dysfunction, really. There is a daughter character in the film who's a bit estranged from the father for reasons they don't really get into, but mostly to do with the fact that he is a relatively cantankerous, cranky older gentleman who obviously doesn't approve of what young people do unless it's what they do. It's one of those generational type of gaps in film that, or even in life, that I find endlessly fascinating. The idea that the older generation just cannot connect with the next generation coming up. We see it now with millennials and Gen Z, and now there's Gen Alpha on the way. We got all these different gens that are happening.
Point.
Yes.
To that point, I just want to say that that's a tale as old as time, and every generation thinks that it's a new thing when it's not.
Very true. Very true. And every generation, the older generation always seems to pick on the next generation for something that they probably did when they were young as well, or some version of it. You know what I mean?
Like,
And it's so interesting how it just keeps happening over and over again throughout the decades.
It's not a new thing, and anyone who thinks it is, you need to be educated better.
You need a history lesson or a sociology lesson.
Exactly.
Or even just like, or just watch movies. To be honest, that's where I get a lot of my information from. But in this film, like I said, at the heart of it is the relationship between a father and son. And what is interesting about it is it's contentious. There's also this idea of unconditional love that a parent and child can have despite their differences. And despite the fact that they may argue or they may see things differently, or one may do something that the other one doesn't like or something like that, there's still that element of unconditional love that seems to be stronger than a stronger bond that you cannot quite quantify, which I find really fascinating. And in this film, you also have, like I said, a very young Ellen Barkin is in this film. Wilford Brimley plays Paul Newman's brother in this film. You see him at one point. Ossie Davis is also in this film as well.
I love Ossie Davis.
Who, of course, this was 5 years before he was in Do the Right Thing. So he's relatively younger, but he's still great in the film. He's only in
Ossie Davis and Ruby, one of the next to Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, one of the best Hollywood power couples.
Coincidentally, Joanne Woodward is also in this film as well. So when they're on screen together, you can tell like that this is a real life couple. Like there's got that chemistry of knowing each other and just feeling comfortable in each other's presence. And there's electric sparks in terms of romance, whether it's intentional for these characters or not. They just had that natural chemistry with one another because they were, by this point, they had been married for like over 20 years, so they have that in this. And also the Paul Newman character, like I said, is dealing with a kind of end of life crisis. His wife has passed away. He's dealing with medical issues that prevent him from working now. He doesn't really quite have a connection with his son, even though it's somewhat there, but it's strained. The issues that I have with this film that I could say maybe perhaps many will have is that it's a bit of a mess tonally. Like I said, since it's dealing with all of these different emotions, the pendulum tends to swing several times. Like, how do we go from not having an argument to having a blowout yelling argument all within a few seconds? Like, how did we get here? What are this? I feel like the steps to get there would have made more sense, but also that kind of dictates the way real life messy relationships work, where when emotions get involved, things can escalate very quickly. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, if anything, that's very true life. But I liked the film overall, probably more so than many did on Letterboxd and IMDb rating would
I saw it got a
believe.
30 on Rotten Tomatoes. I was like, oh, I wonder what Andrew's going to think of it.
It's what's interesting is that Rotten Tomatoes for older films seems a little odd. Not odd to me, but just like
I
I
don't, I don't trust. I don't really trust Rotten Tomatoes that much. And even Letterboxd ratings, I don't even trust that much because there's a lot of trolls and people
very
with
true.
their own
A lot of those
agendas.
a lot of those numbers can be manipulated. I know the IMDb ratings; those things get manipulated so much. You'll get people who just in waves will give a movie 1 star because they don't like somebody in it, or they'll have a political agenda to do it, or they'll just be misogynistic or sexist or homophobic or whatever it is. I know that's a whole messy can of worms. But when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes for older films, I always wondered how. I don't really like trust those numbers because there was no Rotten Tomatoes in 1984. I mean,
Yeah, and also too, and like it's tricky with that because like films from the past could have been reviewed so much differently back then than they are now.
Yeah, and you can't. What is interesting about the internet? Not really interesting, but what is useful about the internet is you can go back and read reviews that were written when movies came out. Like you can go back and read the Roger Ebert 1 star review that he gave for this movie in 1984, of which he kind of says that, like, yeah, the movie's kind of tonally and structurally a bit of a mess. Like it's trying to do so many things and doesn't really succeed truthfully at many of them. That is one of the issues in this film is that sometimes you'll have characters show up in the first act and you won't see them until the third act and they're just kind of there. Like they'll open up perhaps a plot line and then abandon that plot line and then this character will come back, but there'll be no conclusion to said plot line. So the film is a bit of a mess, but I'm such a Paul Newman fan that maybe I'm a little bit biased. And that's why I liked it so much. Oh, not even liked it so much, but I was just fascinated by what they were going for in the movie. Like I said, the heart of the film is there.
You see the pros. You see where it could have been improved upon.
Right. I see what the ideas were. Even if the ideas are not fully realized, they're still good ideas. You know?
Right.
And I do tend to give more of those credence. You know what I mean? Like the pros will be stronger than the negatives in terms of weight of how I look at a film, and perhaps a kind of more middling film like this.
Well, I think that has to. I think you see that a lot with a lot of reappraisals of films. Is people with a little bit more of a positive outlook are looking back at some films nowadays, and that's why you're seeing films like Jennifer's Body get reappraised. You know, like people look at that as a cult film now. Back when it first came out, people hated it, thought it was stupid.
It's gonna be. I just want to say that it's gonna be really interesting to see how, like, so far the movies of this decade will age. Like, what's gonna be? I'm curious. I'm really curious to see what panned things are going to be reevaluated in a negative light, in a positive light, and vice versa. What praised movies are going to be reevaluated in a negative light?
I could think of a couple, but that would be a whole can of worms, as Andrew would say.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, is that in one of the previous Unwatched Piles, Stephen, you had talked about The Artist. And I feel like that's a film that was universally praised when it came out and then kind of relatively forgotten about over time. In terms of being like this critically acclaimed Best Picture winner and all kind of awards and stuff.
Well, it's
The King's Speech is another one.
I don't know that it's because that people don't like the movies now. I just think it's because there's just so much stuff coming out.
Yeah, and I think what has a staying power.
Yeah, I think it's more so that.
Yeah. But all right, well, I like that pick. I'm glad to see that you're diving it. You found some more Paul Newman you could watch. I know he's your favorite.
Yeah,
so.
I know. I gotta get more of his stuff. Like I said, some of his stuff that he's directed has been put out on DVD or Blu-ray, and some hasn't. He did actually an adaptation of The Glass Menagerie Like I think that was the last thing he directed, and that doesn't have a DVD release, I think, at all. And that would be something that I would really like to get, just because I like Tennessee Williams plays. But
Yeah.
that's just me.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll go over to my first watch, and that is a film from Canadian International Pictures, and this is actually their first. This was their first release, and it's a film called The Ernie Game, by a director, Don Owens, and Don Owen. He also they also released another one of his films called Nobody Waved Goodbye. And if you remember this, when we talked about it, this was the film that had the really annoying kid that I hated, and yeah, and it made me not like the movie because this kid was so annoying. I was like, well, I didn't hate the movie, but it was just like, damn, it's gonna be hard to watch this movie again because this kid is annoying. But the Ernie Game, this film came out.
Bert and Ernie game.
What's that?
I was joking. The Bert and Ernie game.
I wish. No, I'm just kidding. No, this movie's good. I like this movie. Came out in 1967, and it's a film about a man. His name is. Let me make sure I get his name right. His name is. I'm losing it here. Well, his name is Ernie, of course. Ernie, and he is actually just left a mental institution. He was spent a little bit of time in an institution, and so he's kind of trying to get back into his normal routine life. He's an eccentric. He does things. He's a little off the wall, and so the first thing he does is he kind of like he gets kicked out of his apartment. He doesn't pay his rent, and then he kind of has to find a way that he becomes homeless, and then he shacks up with some random girl he meets on the street, and then he finds his way back to his ex, and then he stays with her a little. It's a movie that didn't really have a plot. It's a movie that is really just about a character study about this guy who's kind of lost. He wants to be a writer. He thinks he's an artist. He thinks he's going to be somebody, but really he's somebody that just he can't figure out how to fit in the world that he's living in. And so he covers up his insecurities with a lot of flamboyance. He also
looking for outside sources to fill whatever void in him, but but feeling incomplete because I guess not loving oneself. That's I call that the worst. It's like the worst person in the world kind of situation.
Yeah.
Where a protagonist is has creative urges, but doesn't feel that they're good enough, and is afraid to unleash that creativity, so they return to outside sources to suppress that.
Yeah, and that's definitely what's going on with this character, and him being an artist. I don't know if that's even, when you watch the film, I mean, I think as I read the essay in the booklet in here, it talks about a little bit that him being a writer or being an artist might even be a fault. Might even be false too. Like it's one of them things where he's trying to feel like he's important. So he says that I'm an artist, but really he doesn't really care that much about it because in the film, he has a typewriter and he leaves it behind when he gets kicked out of his apartment. And then later in the film, he borrows another typewriter from somebody else. And he acts like it's not that big of a deal. And then he ends up not, never see him write it any more in the whole movie. It's more of a facade to show that he's trying to other people, that he's important, that he's worth having around. It's really, this film is really a character study. It's got its light moments. I know that this all seems like how I'm describing it seems really heavy, but there is a lot of lightness to the film. There's some scenes of fun romance between some of the characters but ultimately as the film ends, it kind of goes to a dark place in the last kind of 15 minutes of the movie. And it ends on a pretty heavy note and somewhat hopeful note, but pretty heavy. And yeah, it's compared to what I'm pairing it with. This is like the light version of what this film is. You know, a film about mental health, a film about somebody trying to find their place. You know, you can, you know, this isn't my pairing, but you can cite films like Taxi Driver, you know, as, you know, Midnight Cowboy, loners, people that are loners that have trouble fitting in and kind of sometimes live their life, you know, on the street, live their life kind of as bohemians, just wandering around trying to figure out their place. That's kind of what this movie is. So yeah, it's really solid film. I really love the release. All the features on this are actually short films from Don Owens.
Interesting.
So, and a lot of these shorts kind of play into the theme of this film. So you can watch this and kind of get more perspective on what he was going for. And then there is an option when you start the film to have a short film play at the beginning. And it was pretty, I watched it with the short at the beginning, and it's very interesting. So it shows this kid and he's in a boat, and you zoom back, and then you go into space and you see planet Earth, and you zoom further back and you see the galaxy, you see all the planets, you see the whole galaxy, and then you sit there for a minute, and then you zoom back in, and it goes past everything again. It goes back to the kid in the boat, and then on his arm is a mosquito. And then you go into the mosquito, and you go into a drop of blood, and then you go into the blood. So it goes like, it shows you how small we are. I think the idea is to show that how small we are in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
So it's an interesting little short at the beginning of the film. But yeah, that's my pick. The Ernie game, definitely recommend. They still have, I believe, copies at CIP. Maybe not with the slipcover, I'm not sure, but it's definitely still available. So, yep, that is my pick. All right, so let's go back around to Josie. Please tell us your pairing with The Uninvited from 1944.
Okay, so my pairing actually is not another ghost story. It's I'm going with like a gothic noir.
Sounds good to me.
It's and that film is I rented and just this film, and I don't actually own this movie. Well, it's you know, being someone who works at a library, I got an interloan of is that okay?
No, I don't care how. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're not changing. We're not changing it now.
No.
Yeah, it's
no,
perfectly
I mean,
fine.
like, is it okay, like, for chasing label? I know that's like typically like what they own, but this is a
No, it's fine.
We change rules here all the time.
The Spiral Staircase, directed by Robert Siodmak from 1946.
I've seen it. That's a good one.
Set in 1916, Helen, played by excellently by Dorothy McGuire, who I find super underrated, is mute after the traumatic event of her parents dying. There is a serial killer on the loose who targets disabled women. The film opens with Helen at a silent film screening. A handicapped paraplegic woman in the audience is murdered. That's the third killing of recent, which of course rightfully sparks fear in Helen. And a friend of Helen's, Dr. Pari, played by Kent Smith, brings her to the Warren estate home. Helen is hired as a caretaker for Mrs. Warren, played by Ethel Barrymore, who is in a condition of ailing health. And there are other people who live in the house too. There's the housekeeper, Mrs. Oates, and her husband, Mr. Oates. They help in taking care of Mrs. Warren. And Mrs. Warren has a son named Stephen and a stepson named Albert, who's a professor. Stephen and Albert's secretary, Blanche, are having a romantic affair, and another murder happens, and Helen really has to be on the lookout for this killer. Similar to The Uninvited, this is a gothic noir mystery with family secrets, and there are also strong women at the center of them who don't tolerate mistreatment and injustice.
Awesome.
And
it's a good pick.
Some trivia. The close-ups of the killer's eyes and hands are those of director Robert Siodmak. You know, this predated many slashers. Joan Crawford, after receiving critical praise for her performance in Woman's Face in 1941, at one point campaigned for the role of the mute girl, later played by Dorothy McGuire. And I think Dorothy McGuire was the right choice. I wonder if Guillermo del Toro has seen this, because, like, with the female lead not speaking, kind of like Sally Hawkins in The Shape of Water.
Oh, I'm sure he has. He's
Crawford,
probably seen everything.
Crawford also owned the rights, but MGM studio chief Louis B. Mayer vehemently opposed the idea, telling her no more cripples or maimed women. Asshole.
Louis B. Mayer was notorious for being an asshole, so that's apropos.
And then at one point, Mrs. Oates is shown with a real rag mop in her hands. While this may look odd to modern audiences, it was a common practice in the past to reuse any hand-wearing cloth scraps by turning them into mops.
Cool. Oh, that's a good pick. Yeah, I have that. Wait, I can't remember what label put that out.
I rented the Kino Lorber.
Yes. Okay, yeah, I have that release up on the shelf. Yeah, I remember it being very atmospheric as well. Like a lot of gothic horror films. A lot of it has to do with not seeing things and causing a lot, like, this sense of dread in the air.
Yeah.
That a lot of films like this did. So yeah, that's two films from the 40s. Both kind of have a little bit of same vibes, and even though they're two different types of stories, I like it. It's a good pairing.
Yeah, they both seem incredibly atmospheric, and they're both dealing with spooky things. You know what I mean? One dealing with ghosts, one dealing with other creepy things happening. Robert
That's
Siodmak.
exactly why I picked it. Also, and the foundation being Family Secrets.
Yeah, that's very true.
Are you guys fans of Robert Siodmak?
I was just gonna say, super underrated director in my opinion.
He is. Yeah.
He just did a lot of genre stuff. I know he always pops up in some film noir box set somewhere.
Yeah.
Like every time one drops, I feel like at least one of his movies are in there.
Well, you just talked about one of his movies in a recent Unwatched Pile with the Killers.
Oh, yes, I did. Yeah, the Killers remake from the 1950s.
Yep.
He did so many things like Cry of the City, Crisscross, Time Out of Mind. Like I said, he did The Killers from 1946. And then actually The Killers was the movie he did, I think, the same year as The Spiral Staircase. So right at the same time, dealing with sinister things. Really, he's really good director. Super underrated, I think, and kind of important.
Most definitely. All right. Before we head over to Andrew's pairing, we got a bunch of people popping in. CIP, hell yeah, of course, I know. Dan's over here. Dan always is active, of course, in our chats. Something about him, I don't know what he's talking about. He's talking about Oppenheimer when it came to movies that will be remembered as great films 20, 30, 50 years from now.
Yes, that I definitely think will be that's definitely a modern masterpiece, classic, new American classic, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Nolan's films.
I was just going to say the same thing, Stephen. I think Nolan's films have a lot of staying power just in the zeitgeist because he's so popular with a cross section of audiences.
Well, he's created a certain I don't know about visually, but like as a his film. I mean, you could maybe argue he's got a distinct visual style, but I think more or less his writing style, his way he tells stories is what's going to keep him. They're going to study him years from now, because of how he told stories.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, even his early work, people go back and talk about. And you know what I mean? His early work from
Memento is always talked about.
Yeah, Memento is always talked about. I mean, Following has a Criterion release.
It does.
That was like his one of his earliest films. Yeah. That film. He's just one of those guys who has he has a staying power in terms of people constantly bringing him up, and he's also still making work all the time. You know what I mean?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
You want me to go to my pairing?
Yes, please. Tell us what.
I'm starting to get tired.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
we're
this is
all
late for
tired.
you.
Trust me.
This is yeah,
But
for me, this is my prime living hours. So I'm good.
that's
But
why he's
I'll
wearing.
try to be brief.
He's about to go to school here in a second with his school shirt on. Right.
I'll be brief. So I decided to pair Harry and Son with another film dealing with a father and son relationship, and there were many of them. I was thinking parent child, whether it be mother daughter, father son, whatever the case may be, familial issues. But I was thinking about Beginners, the Mike
I
Mills
like
film.
Beginners. I haven't seen Beginners in a really long time, but I remember really liking it.
It's a movie I don't think I've seen since probably since I bought this Blu-ray when it came out in 2010. I don't think I've seen this movie probably since around that time. But that movie has such a staying power with me that I've often thought about it a
Yeah,
lot
it's
over
a
the
sweet
years.
movie.
It's a very deep movie. It's a powerful film. It's a film, like I said, at the core of it is dealing with a father-son relationship, but it's also dealing with a lot of life things as well. And for those of you who don't know the premise of it, the movie stars Christopher Plummer and Ewan McGregor. Christopher Plummer won an Oscar for this film. I think it's the only Oscar he ever won. And they played the father and son pair in question. And what happens in this film is Christopher Plummer's character is obviously older in life, and his wife has passed away, and he decides that he's going to come out as being gay. Like he's been kind of closeted gay his whole life. So now that he's towards the end of his life, he just decides to feel liberated and decides to come out and of course tell his son, portrayed by Ewan McGregor. And he, of course, he starts a relationship with a much younger man in this film as well. But one of the things is that he's also dying from cancer, which, of course, is something incredibly serious and something plucked right out of life, unfortunately, for many. And so you have him dealing with all of those things as well. But you also have Ewan McGregor's character um, dealing with this newfound information about his father, you know, and him not so much grappling with the fact that his father is gay, but grappling with the idea that does he really know who his father is? If his father has been harboring such a large personal secret this whole time, it makes him kind of reevaluate who his father is and all these kind of questions and things that are lingering. But he's also having to deal with the inevitable death of his father as well, who has terminal cancer. So a lot of things are, a lot of life things are happening, dramatic life things are happening in this film. And of course, like I said, at the heart of it is the relationship between a father and son. He also has a romantic relationship with the Melanie Laurent in this film as well, who I always thought was a fantastic actress, who hasn't really done a lot of work lately, but I felt like she was just in a lot of things in the 2000s and 2010s. She, of course, was in Quentin Tarantino's Inglorious Bastard. She ran that.
I love.
She ran that cinema.
Her red dress.
Yeah, she ran that cinema. I believe Steven, wasn't she in National Treasure with Nicolas Cage?
No, that was.
No, you're thinking Diane
Am I
Kruger.
thinking of Diane Kruger?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yes,
Which
I
she's
am.
also in Inglorious Bastards as well. But
Yeah, she was also in Inglorious Bastards as well. Two very talented, very attractive blonde actresses who kind of played similar roles throughout their career. And so he's dealing with that. But also, one of the caveats in this film is, of course, Stephen, I do have a penchant and a soft spot in my heart for dogs. And there is a little dog in this film as well who, this has been a while, Steve. I believe the dog kind of comments and not talks, but just kind of has like an inner monologue really about things and kind of observing things and just observing this life. And Ewan McGregor strikes up a relationship with it because I believe it's his father's dog that he's got to now take care of. And the movie bounces back and forth between different time frames. So the movie may be a little bit difficult for people to get into in terms of following, but I think it's really, really good. I really like Mike Mills' work in general. For those of you who aren't familiar with his work,
was really good.
He did 20th Century Women, which I thought was really fantastic. Come On, with Joaquin Phoenix, also really, really good. I got to get more of his work in my collection. I think this is the only one of his films that I have. But yeah, I really, really, really like this film, and it's always been something that I've thought about.
Nice. Yeah, I'm to be honest, I'm not very aware of this filmmaker. So, and the other films you said he did, I'm like, yeah, them are cool movies. That didn't make the connection. So yeah, awesome, like it. Um, all right, so we'll move on to the pick. Of course, this is a little since we've been doing a lot of wrinkles with our programming with Josie tonight. She now if we didn't say it. She as she said she didn't pull from her own collection. She didn't really buy movies. She should have been taken from the library. So we're gonna make an exception for my last pick here, my pairing, because I don't technically own the movie I'm gonna like. Usually that's the roles on this show is that you have to own both movies that you're talking about. But in this case, I don't technically have it in my hands yet. I did buy it. It's just not here yet. So, but I've seen the film, and I was like, well, there was a lot of when I thought about what would pair nicely. I thought of a couple different movies, but they seemed to be a little bit too obvious, and so I wanted to pick a little bit less obvious one, and I just really like this movie, and I know you do too, Andrew, and you'll be able to speak to it as well because it's from the great British filmmaker Mike Leigh, and that is Naked.
Wow.
Whoa, Naked. That's a good one.
Yes. So if you think about how I described the Ernie game, if you think about Naked, it's about a man going down a very dark path.
His performance that's just one.
Yes.
Best performances of the 90s.
In general, it's a fantastic performance, and he's a man who's a narcissist. He's
misogynistic.
Yeah, misogynistic. He uses sex as a weapon on women. He hates women. I mean, he essentially he really hates women, and he just uses everybody, and is always trying to show how smart he is. He's always, like I said, he's a narcissist. He's always trying to tell everybody how it is. And, it's a dark movie. I think Andrew's going to bring it to the screen for us. You bringing it to the screen for us?
Yeah. I got it for you just to back you up.
I appreciate it.
I got your back.
Yeah.
Yes,
I did buy the BFI put out a new 4K restoration. It isn't a 4K, still a Blu-ray, but it is a new 4K restoration.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it has like same features basically on it as the Criterion. So, this is a really hard movie to watch. It's a pretty hard movie to stomach at points. But it is very much similar to our Ernie character, a character study about a man who just can't find his place. And he's roaming around. He's, in case, as I described it to Andrew, this is kind of Ernie game on steroids because it's way more violent, way more obscene, way more going into way more themes than the Ernie game is. And it's a vastly better movie. It is a better movie. Mike Leigh has done so many great films over the years. I'm still trying to watch them. I know you're a big fan, Andrew.
New movie in coming out with Marianne Jean Baptiste.
Yeah.
I'm actually looking it up right now. So I've always been a big fan of Mike Leigh's work.
Secrets and Lies is another really great
one.
Oh
yeah, I love Secrets and Lies.
Yeah, I watched that in a film course, and that was like my introduction to Mike Leigh was watching Secrets and Lies.
Is really good in that too.
Yeah, All or Nothing's another one I really like. I think Severin put that out.
I like Life is Sweet.
Life is Sweet's another good one. I get some early performances.
Yeah, Life is Sweet. Talk with young Timothy Spall. I recommended that to somebody one time at the Criterion sale. This was like over 10 years ago, and he ended up liking the movie. And I was just describing it to him because Mike Leigh. I remember a few years ago, I think he got like a Career Achievement Award at the BFI at the BAFTAs, and I was watching it, and they were just doing like a sizzle reel of all of his work, and it's like, wow, this stuff is really, really amazing. And this was, I think, before Mr. Turner came out. He had won that, and I know that was one of his recent films as well. And yeah, Naked is such a raw film. Yeah. Like it's just so like it's like watching something so, like you said, like literally Naked is an apropos metaphorical title because the film feels like it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it all takes place at night, and it's dark and gritty and dirty, and the character is a scumbag. The film feels scummy, And that's kind of a lot of Mike Leigh's work, is that level of powerful, whether
Yeah.
it really gets to you and really hits you hard. That's what I've always really respected about his work in general. Yeah, like even a lot of his early films were just like talking about like working class people and all that kind of stuff, and like hard hitting stuff. It's really good. All or Nothing, like you said, is kind of underrated.
Yeah,
In my opinion.
and
And I
and
think
how it pairs with Ernie Game is essentially just about the main characters being two characters that are lost souls, and kind of being in contrast. Like I said, Ernie is a little bit more, even though he's essentially got some of the same qualities as the character in Naked. He's definitely a lot more. He's a nicer person. He's a way nicer person than David Thewlis's character. And
yeah, and the movie that Josie was talking about is called Hard Truths, and according to IMDb, it says it's in production. So
cool.
perhaps we'll see it
Some more Mike Leigh coming
next year.
Good.
And it'll be the first film that he's done since Peterloo in 2018, and then before that he had done Mr. Turner in 2014. I have a whole Mike Leigh section. Yeah, Topsy Turvy. Topsy Turvy's been released by Criterion. Vera Drake is very good. Happy Go Lucky is a movie that I think is only on DVD, starring Sally Hawkins. That it's a movie that I initially didn't like, but I've kind of warmed up a bit on in the years. And I think if I go back and rewatch it, I may like it even more.
Awesome. Yeah, I still need to just watch more Mike Leigh. I just, like anything, just don't have enough time. But yeah, that is my pairing. It's always my favorite thing. I always say this. It's always my favorite thing. Finding the perfect pairing with a new movie you just watched is always fun. So that is it for this Unwatched Pile. Josie.
Thanks for letting me join you guys.
Of course.
I'd love to be on again one day.
We will, and hopefully we'll be able to see you next time.
Yeah.
But thanks, and tell everybody where they can find your YouTube channel and your poems and all that stuff.
You can find me, look up Josephine DeMarco, my full name, and I'm on Letterboxd, Josie DeMarco. I don't really log movies or review movies. I just mainly make lists. My Instagram page is Positive Poems, and I have back in January I recorded with the Piecing It Together podcast. It's when they take a new movie and try to figure out whether pair it with other movies. I did an episode on probably my favorite movie of the year, Poor Things, with David Rosen, and we did puzzle pieces for that. That episode will be available to listen to, I think, in a couple days.
Cool.
And I also have other videos in the work, my Best Picture pairings, as well as personal awards, and also and then when it comes to April and May, I'm gonna try to do the Earth Day videos and the mental health videos.
Fantastic. Well, please, everybody, go follow Josie. Give her a subscribe. Keep up with what she's doing. And Andrew, thanks again, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah,
right,
we do this all the time. It's whatever. Don't get paid. We don't get paid at all.
It's a Monday for me. Talking movies is like breathing for me. So
I know,
yeah.
Right? Well, I'll talk with you next Monday.
Yes, we'll be back for another.
We'll do that Chasing Labels.
We'll be back for another Chasing Labels next Monday, of course. This week we'll have all the Vinegar Syndrome and Partner Label stuff will be dropping on Monday. It is a leap year this year, Steven, so we got to have one more day of February before we get to all that stuff.
It helps with a mortgage, so one more day. But all right. Well, thanks everybody. Of course, this will also be on our audio podcast as well here in the next day. So if you just want to do that, just wait for that. But other than that, thanks everybody for watching and listening. And hey, what are you doing here? Come on, guys, get out of here. Go. go watch some movies, especially the ones that are in your unwatched pile. Have a good night, everybody.